story is not in the rules. So drive a car, hitch a ride, ride this, ride that, take about that. My prologue. The last one is the one I'm going. That's the shit I'm going to talk. The rest of them, I'm not in. What did you do with spring break? What did people do with spring break? Went to the beach. You're getting ahead. Do this, do that, yak, sleep, blah, blah, blah. Smuggle drugs into the country. That's the kid I want to find. I made an awesome porn film. You come here, we're talking. It's not the real successful world. Okay, now I'll tell you some stories. I had to do a story about this guy named Greg Smith. I do a lot of writing right now for this magazine. It's an education magazine. I really like writing for them because they pay really well. They pay on time, and that's hard to find. So they assign me stories in this, so I get a call from my editor. She says, I'm going to send you an email. I want you to do a story about this guy named Greg Smith. Okay, who's Greg Smith? He's about to be named the Texas High School Superintendent of the Year. He's from Clear Creek ISD, which is in the Houston area. And so I go online and I read all this stuff about it. He's a really successful guy. I mean, I don't think you get to be Superintendent of the Year without being pretty damn successful. He's really, really successful. So I'm reading about this, success this, and success that, success that. And then they send me his nomination packet that they send to whoever makes this decision. They send me that packet. It's just, this guy, he's never failed at anything. I mean, I've never seen such an impressed guy. How can you be president? You know? He's so good. So I'm interviewing him, and it's just this good. I'm going, God, that is so boring. So I finally asked him, I said, have you ever failed at anything? I said, have you ever failed at anything and there was a significant, profound impact from that failure? And he was like, well, I didn't see that question coming. And he thought for a second, he said, well, one time, I love it when somebody stops and says, well, you know, I got a funny story about that. I mean, that's what I want. I want him to say, yeah, I got a pretty funny story about that. He said, when I was an assistant principal at a middle school in Galveston, Texas, I was at the end of the day, remember junior high? Remember how loud junior high is? If you don't, go back to a junior high sometime. It's unbelievable how loud junior highs are. So at the end of the day, we're standing in the hall. Outside, there's all this noise and commotion. All of a sudden, there's screaming. We just thought girls were chasing each other or something. Who knew? So all of a sudden, this door burst open. These two girls run in there screaming. And I'm like, what is going on? So-and-so got stabbed in the stomach. And it wasn't even a gang thing. It was a personal thing of some sort. So like going, what? Stabbed in the stomach. Run out there, not a little penknife either, a knife. Oh my God, you know. So the other kid's running off, scoops him up, runs into the nurse's office. And sitting there, he's wearing a white shirt, he's holding this compress, he's trying to get this kid's bleeding to stop. He's like, oh my God, how did this happen, kind of stuff. And finally the EMS gets there and they load the kid up and take him to the ambulance, take off to the hospital. And he's left standing there in his starched white shirt, soaked with his boy's blood. And he's thinking, please God, you know, let this kid live. And the kid dies on the way to the hospital. And he said, that changed everything for me. He said, at that point, as a young assistant professor, principal, he said, I will never be late again. I won't be tardy. If I hear it, I'll respond. Okay? So his success to this day doesn't come from success, it comes from failure. He traces everything back to that moment. He said, I wouldn't be here today had it not been for that. See? So that's how you find a story. We're talking about finding stories, right? That's how you find a story. You ask the question that's going to get the person to tell you a story. Like I was interviewing a guy this last week. He's from West Texas, a little big town called Smyre, Texas. Everybody been to Smyre, Texas? It's a 1A school out in the middle of nowhere. It's between Level and Lubbock. The town has 473 people in it. The town has 473 people. The school is much smaller. Okay. So anyway, I'm talking, and this guy is like the president of the Texas Association of Secondary School Principals. So I'm talking to him, and he's West Texas. Anybody here from West Texas? People from West Texas simply do not talk. I'm asking questions. I'm not getting anything from him. I would say, well, what was like the most profound stuff like that? And he goes, I like working with students. Well, he's your principal. I assumed that. Everything was just sort of just clipped, dry, just bleached out. And I'm going, oh my God, I've got 800 words out of this stuff. So finally, he, as an aside, I was asking him, I said, did you play football or anything in high school? He said, what? They didn't let me play. So what's the next obvious question? Why not? Okay, we stop right there. I'm going to say this. Always ask the obvious question. And most people don't. They wouldn't ask, they would go, wait a minute, why weren't you allowed to play? They usually go right by it. Okay? Stop and go, what do you mean you weren't allowed to play? Well, when he was 10 years old, the day before he was to go into 3rd grade, he was riding his bike and he got hit by a car. It broke both legs in multiple places. One so badly they couldn't even set it. And they couldn't set it because he also had some pretty severe brain injuries. He was in a coma for 6 weeks. And he can't do anything that is physical. So basketball, anything where he might get hit in the head, out of the question. So he became a really, really good tennis player. Okay? So now all of a sudden I got a story. But it's typical West Texas. I asked him, I said, well, how did that change you? He goes, I don't think it did. Really? You don't think that changed you? I don't think it did. I'm like, well, that screws that up, you know. I was able to use it, but not nearly as well as I had hoped to. Because I couldn't just argue with it. Of course it changed you. You know, like, are you sure about that?
Really?
But, so anyway, you have to ask these questions that will get people to open up to you. Now, what questions do you ask? Okay. First off, you got to do your research first. All right. You got to kind of know who this person is, and you can't ask stupid questions like, "What advice would you give to young people?" That is the dumbest damn question that's ever been asked. You know why? Because there's not one of you who care what that advice would be. Because you know what that advice is, don't you? Study hard, work hard, blah, blah, blah. Is any person that you interview go, what advice would you give to young people? Oh, I would suggest you start drinking now. And I would really, you know, and listen, don't pay a lot for drugs. Drugs are readily accessible. So listen, I got a friend. You're not going to get that. Okay? So you have to ask an intelligent question based on something that you know about the person. And here's 6 questions. Best, worst. What was the best? What was the worst? All right? What was the highest, lowest, least, most? Life is like war. All right? What is war? War is 59 minutes and 30 seconds of boredom and 30 seconds of sheer terror. You know right about